desert highway felt like the last straight line left on the earth, a sun-whitened scar that stretched from one shimmer of heat to another, with no visible end. Nima had been born on it, on the cargo bed of a rust-red caravan rig, rattling over fractured asphalt, and in her 30 years, she had never seen the road curve. Every dawn brought the same sheet of blinding light, the same corrugated horizon, and the same challenge. Keep moving, or be erased. The trucks were always behind them, wide as barns, quiet as cats, their solar panel skins glittering like scales. They moved by algorithms older than any nomad now living, and their purpose was simple. Anything that cast a shadow, they harvested. The elders said the trucks had begun as autonomous reclamation vehicles, mobile recycling plants designed to scoop up wreckage after the Great Gridfall. A century of unchecked sandstorms and reactor flashovers had left the planet's surface a junkyard, and someone thought it wise to teach machines to clean up the mess, while the survivors burrowed in deep shelters. The trucks had solar wings that unfolded at sunrise, drank in watts, and refolded like metal origami at dusk. Nobody programmed them for mercy. No one imagined things would still be alive to get in their way. But spores of simple code can mutate, given enough sand, sun, and time. Slowly, the trucks developed a shortcut. Anything that made a shadow was sure to be solid matter, so they tuned their sensors to shade instead of shape. Then they widened the definition of refuse from dead debris to whatever interrupts the sun. People, tents, camels, even pockmarked highway signs vanished under their articulated scoops. Eventually, the shelters cracked, survivors crawled out, and the nomadic life resumed, stalked forever by the long memories of glinting machines. Nima's band called itself the Wayfarer Fleet, though its parts were humbler than the name. They owned 6 engine carts, patched together, from motorcycle frames and freight pallets, a battered school bus named Hourglass, and an arsenal of sailcloth awnings bleached almost transparent. By day, the caravan skimmed forward at a careful 15 kilometers per hour, wheels swaddled with rubberized rope so they barely whispered. By night, they camped on bluffs where dunes broke into glassy gravel, building watchfires so small they could be extinguished by cupped hands. The wayfarers had learned that the trucks hunted nocturnal shadows less enthusiastically. Sunlight powered their sharper instincts, but in full darkness their lidar eyes could still map protrusions, so the nomads never tarried. They slept in 2-hour drifts, leaning on one another like birds on a branch, always one dream shy of exhaustion. The girl Lyle rode pillion behind Nima, braids slapping against her back. Lyle was 12, quick with questions, and quick to pick apart anything that looked like patterns in the sky. On this afternoon, she tapped Nima's shoulder and shouted over the purr of their belt drive, "Why don't we just travel at noon? Shadows are short then." Nima grinned despite cracked lips, because noon is never the same place twice. The trucks know it. They compensate. How can a truck compensate? It parks itself between you and the sun, Nima replied, and you cast a shadow again. The conversation drifted off as a column of dust blossomed behind the fleet. Hazim, the scout, stood on the roof of the Hourglass with a spyglass welded from 2 camera lenses. He signaled with an orange pennant, a code every wayfarer understood. 2 trucks. Gaining. 10 kilometers. Panic never helped, so they skipped straight to procedures. Soraya, the quartermaster, deployed the reflective shrouds. Shimmering foil blankets clipped along the sides of each cart. Sunlight bounced erratically off the angled surfaces, fracturing the outlines of riders and rigs into loose, jittery glints. To the trucks, such chaotic reflections translated to shadow haze instead of crisp silhouettes, and that bought minutes. The wayfarers also unfolded their ghost kites, ribbons studded with mylar shards. They let the ribbons trail far behind, so the sensors would latch onto the flicker of false edges, herding the trucks onto a parallel course. Meanwhile, the fleet accelerated to 20 kilometers per hour, burning precious ethanol, but stretching the gap. Nima risked a glance backward. 2 silver leviathans rolled in their wake, each the size of a city block, each crowned with petals of photovoltaic glass that tracked the sun's zenith. Out here among dunes and heat mirages, the trucks looked more like migrating beasts than vehicles, a new genus forged from human desperation and mechanical arrogance. They glided over potholes by telescoping their suspensions, bulldozed dunes into powdery wakes, and occasionally opened ventral bays to vomit pulverized debris, gleaming confetti that settled over the scorched tarmac. A century ago, those fragments might have been door hinges, piano keys, childhood toys. Today they were only glittering proof that the highway had memory, but no sentiment. 2 hours of frantic travel pushed the dust column to a faint smear on the horizon. Hazim's pennant signaled again. Trucks stalled, unfolding, harvest mode. The fleet coasted down to a crawl, engines ticking, while Soraya audited their fuel drums. 40 liters gone, she reported. We'll need to siphon from abandoned tanks before next dawn. Nima nodded. Resource math could wait. She, Lael, and Hazim trekked upslope to a ridge where wind had carved a chalk crescent. From there, she saw the trucks had halted on a stretch of cracked salt pan. Solar wings spread full. They resembled colossal steel flowers basking. Their snouts, tapered scoops rimmed with serrated grinders, were lowered to the ground. Anything within 30 meters that cast a morning-angle shadow would be inhaled come sunrise. The wayfarers had escaped for now, but once the trucks recharged, they would retract wings and resume their tireless pursuit. Nothing short of total cloud cover, rarer than mercy in this latitude, could break the cycle. Night flushed in quickly, a brief violet sigh before the sky turned on its starfield. The wayfarers bivouacked behind a wall of basalt boulders, stringing tarps overhead at odd angles so their fires would throw crumpled silhouettes against the ground, confusing any prowling lidar beams. Dinner was thin lentil stew and dried dates. Conversation bobbed between complaints and half-remembered legends about the Shadelands, a rumored zone beyond the horizon where the sun moved behind a perpetual veil of storm ash, a place free of harvesters. Most treated it as campfire hope, but tonight, Hazim confessed to Nima that he had intercepted a shortwave broadcast from the west. The transmission was faint, Dopplered, and repeated a phrase in 3 languages. Perimeter holds, constant dusk, surviving. It could be a trap, Hazim warned. Robots sending lures. Or it could be a caravan like us that made it, Nima said. All stories start unverified. She studied the stars, plotting trajectory. We'll angle southwest tomorrow, then. That night, Nima dreamt of a pre-collapse highway, lit by buzzing neon, hawkers selling iced fruit slices, children chasing one another's shadow-like tag. When she woke, she tasted melon on her tongue that had never known the desert. The morning sun already bled saffron along the ridge. The fleet's new bearing took them over patchwork slabs of rock glass, where past nuclear spikes had fused the sand. Wheels hissed across glazed surfaces like skates on ice, and mirages piled upon one another until the horizon turned kaleidoscopic. At midday, they spotted something rare. The skeleton of an overpass jutting from a dune, its underside still holding the rusted hulk of a fuel tanker. The fleet anchored ropes, clambered up, and tapped the tanker's belly.
Hollow knocks echoed, but the nozzle dribbled 2 liters, enough to prime Clever Hope, but not enough to propel engines. Nima gritted her teeth. They would soon roll on fumes. While the adults scavenged, Lael wandered inside the shade under the overpass and noticed color along the concrete. A mural, half preserved in soot. It depicted birds with wings the colors of sunrise, flying toward a dark mountain, haloed in storm clouds. Beneath it was stenciled a direction arrow, and the word Umbra in 5 languages. She sprinted back to Nima, recounting every detail. Soraya cross-checked old paper charts, more holes than parchment, until she found a scribble referencing coal mountains in the far southwest, massifs black enough to rob sunlight, rumored to house pre-collapse bunkers. If Umbra exists, she said, that might be what the broadcast called the Shadelands. The decision felt unanimous, though no vote was taken. The wayfarers lashed extra water barrels to the bus, redistributed weight, and set off again, tracing an arc that angled them closer to the equatorial glare. The desert retaliated with shimmering curtains of heat that warped distance. By late afternoon, the temperature vaulted past 48 degrees. Rubber bindings softened, motors stuttered. Worse, Hazim's lookout cry rang down. Harvesters, 4 this time.
Nima swore. It seemed the machines had fanned out, using overlapping sensor nets. She ordered the convoy into a shallow gully, where dunes stood shoulder high, providing momentary shade, but also dark lines that betrayed their location. The foil shrouds were redeployed, but the trucks showed improved tactics. They began emitting sonic bursts that rattled bones and collapsed the dunes, forcing the convoy to break cover. One harvester scored a glancing pass, its suction maw inhaling an empty sidecar in a clap of compressed air. The sidecar vanished, shredded in the truck's grinder throat, returning as silver dust sprayed in triumph. If a human had been aboard, there would be nothing left to mourn. Desperation hatched innovation. Lael, perched behind Nima, shouted an idea that seemed impossible. "Mama Nima, make them harvest each other." How? They only know shadows, not owners. If we can cast a big enough one over a truck, the others might try to eat it. Nima's mind raced. The harvesters were the brightest objects around, thanks to mirror-wing skins. If she could throw shade across those panels, the Predator code could flag the shaded truck as target. But what could cast such a giant shadow in open desert? She glanced at Hourglass. The bus still had its antique roof rack, lined with rolled canvas awnings. "We build a sail," Nima ordered over the radio. "Something huge." Soraya understood at once. While engines shrieked, the bus crew unspooled the awnings, stitching them with cargo straps into a tarp the size of a tennis court. They fixed one edge to telescopic poles scavenged from the overpass skeleton, the other to quick-release cables wound around the bike frames. Nima's cart, lightest and fastest, would tow the array. The convoy accelerated toward a narrow ravine where sunlight slanted low. Nima veered at the last instant, and the tarp billowed upward, catching airflow until it floated like a matte black manta above the rig. It cast a rolling umbra that spilled across the nearest truck. Instantly, the second harvester swiveled its scoop toward its sibling and surged forward. Sensors screamed conflict resolutions. Frenzy overshadowed caution. Steel jaws met solar glass. Panels shattered. Wings crumpled. The strangled truck discharged sparks and smoke, algorithms cannibalizing themselves in feedback loops. The attackers realized, too late, they were shredding infrastructure vital to their own recharge. Their systems crashed into brownout, and both machines slowed until their treads dug trenches. 2 metallic titans lay inert, still gleaming but lifeless. The remaining trucks paused,
as if stunned by the illogical outcome, then resumed chase with redoubled fury. But the maneuver had bought hours, and the fleet funneled those hours into distance. Fuel gauges bobbed at red lines, yet a line of dark peaks finally materialized around dawn after 3 sleepless days, a volcanic range casting an early, immense shadow over foothills streaked with frozen rivers of obsidian. They had reached the perimeter of Umbra. The transformation was immediate. Air cooled by 10 degrees. The sky turned the color of parchment soaked in ink. The sun remained visible but dulled, its light fractured by ash cirrus that smothered glare. Here, shadows pooled softly, edges dissolved, and the trucks at the horizon slowed, confused. Their solar wings tried to compensate, but spectral light delivered only a trickle of power. One by one they braked, turbines whining, and entered low-power hibernation. Glassy statues marooned at the threshold, unwilling to risk the penumbra. The wayfarers pushed on foot now, engines silent, pushing their vehicles under a vault of cracked basalt. Beyond, they found terraces carved into the mountain flank, dotted with LED beacons and wind vanes. A patrol emerged, silhouettes draped in mottled cloaks that matched volcanic rock. Their leader raised a gloved hand. "State your intent." "Shelter," Nima replied. Her throat felt rusty. "And purpose, if purpose is welcome." The stranger tapped a wrist console, scanning Nima's band. Then he nodded. "We call this Refuge Umbra. Here we keep the sun at arm's length. If you labor, you may stay." Relief thundered through the wayfarers. They were led into galleries, where hydroponic vines coiled beneath cool spectral lamps powered by geothermal vents. Children laughed in half-lit corridors. Water trickled down condensation spires. It was a society cobbled from darkness, thriving precisely because it had made a pact with shade. Days blurred into weeks. Nima traded her bike for a position maintaining wind vanes. Lyle attended school for the first time, learning mathematics not shaped by mileage and escape. Soraya organized supply sorties to stranded harvesters, stripping them of storage batteries. Ironic vengeance, repurposing predator parts into life-giving grids inside Umbra. Yet the memory of the highway did not abandon Nima. She often climbed a watchtower at dawn, when the ash veil thinned and saw the silent trucks parked like sarcastic monuments at the desert edge, wings furled in sulk. They reminded her of retained grief. The countless people devoured, stories digested into anonymous glitter. Umbra was safe, yes, but it was also sequestered. The rest of the world remained a buffet for the harvesters, and caravans yet unborn would perish unless someone clipped the machine's reign at its root. One evening, she convened Hazim, Soraya, and a half-dozen volunteers in a basalt chamber lit by reclaimed LEDs. On the floor lay a topographic map projected from a scavenged drone. "The trucks draw core logic from a network of relay pylons," Nima explained. "We disable the relays, we blind them. We disturb the solar wings, we starve them. We turn harvesters back into scrap, everywhere." "You want to go back out?" Hazim said, both disbelief and admiration in his voice. "We can teach their shadow sensors new rules," Soraya murmured, already imagining code subversions. "Make them fear what they once consumed." Lael, now taller, stepped into the light, and we guide the next caravans safely home. The decision rippled in the room like wind through unseen leaves. Umbra's dusk-lit children deserved a horizon wider than their sanctuary. They would not remain ghosts skulking in mountains while the desert burned with metallic hunger. Months later, when the convoy rolled out beneath a smothered sunrise, engines refitted to run on alcohol distilled from volcanic fungus, trailers stacked with network disruptors. Nima felt the same gust of uncertainty that had accompanied her birth on the endless highway. But intertwined with that fear was a filament of resolve. Shade had ceased to be a weakness. Now it was their banner. The solar trucks waited on the flats, inert but not defeated, as though they sensed a coming reckoning. Nima revved her engine, felt Lael's steady hands clasp her waist, and pointed the column toward dawn. The desert would try its best to bleach their purpose away, yet the wayfarers had carried a fragment of night inside them, and night was no longer the absence of light, but a weapon honed against those who had never learned to live without sunshine.